Today is January 30th, 2017, and my name is Allison Thompson. I'm the director at Marshall Public Library, and I'm here with Warren Strohm, and we've been doing a series of interviews. It's been quite my pleasure to learn about Warren and his life, and today we are continuing this series. And Warren, I think that you had drafted a memory of yours that you wanted to share with me, so go ahead whenever you're ready.
Allison, I feel like this is quite a privilege, and it's taken a little concentration on my part, but it's turned out to be fun.
It has.
To recall what was happening in my life, and today, before I finish, I'm going to emphasize one particular segment in my life that I made a decision that it was kind of an iffy decision, but I think it turned out to be a fantastic decision to do what I did, because it led me into something that was a little later in my life, just a few months, in fact, that put me on the actually it was they put me in the fuel business, which I don't think I would ever had the chance to do that before, and I have no regrets about what decisions I made about what happened when I sold gasoline, oil, and so on, and to both farm customers and retail for over 50 years, and because it just brought travel and just a lot of things in my wife and myself that I don't think we would ever had a chance to enjoy before. I want to start this morning. Maybe it might be a little repetition, but I want to start when I first got out of the service, in military service of a year and a half. I got home on Christmas morning, 1946. I left Georgia the day before. Unfortunately, I took a bus to Atlanta, Georgia, and then I was able to get a plane seat to Indianapolis, and came to Marshall on the bus, and we arrived. I was Santa Claus, more or less. I didn't come down the chimney, but I came to Marshall in a Greyhound bus. And then my discharge was, I believe, January the 3rd in 1947. And the country was still feeling the effects of World War II to a big extent back in those times. And in fact, clear up to the early 50s, I found out when I engaged in building in West Union in 1952. So I got home. My parents lived here in town, and I was glad to be home. And so what happened? I had one teacher in high school that recommended that I apply for college at Rose Institute of Rose. It wasn't Rose Holman that time. It was Rose, forget what the Rose College, and I applied over there, and they told me that I would have to wait because all the men that was in active duty and all during the 4 to 6 years in World War II was ahead of me. So I said, well, I invested my $25, and which was which was a chunk of my bank account at that time, but I thought it was well worth it. And I looked around for the things and started waiting. The state of Illinois had a fund whereby they were helping military veterans to recuperate and get established maybe a little bit in their life. And the state of Illinois would grant you $20 a week for 1 year. And it was called the 5220 Club. Well, I took a look at it, but not a very serious look, because I was raised on a small 40-acre farm in grade school, my grade school years, and we never lacked for anything to eat, but we didn't have any surplus money. But everything we had, my father and my parents earned, and I was taught that if you don't take anything, you don't take any particular money, I guess. You do not take any money from anybody unless you do something to earn it. Now, I guess I had earned, perhaps I had earned that by my military service, serving a year and a half, but I remember I didn't look at it that way, so I didn't even go sign up. Now, I have no feelings against those who did. That was their business, and I absolutely have I did not look down upon anybody or in any way, shape, or form. But anyhow, I didn't do that. My father, during the early 40s, he bought this 94-acre farm about north of Marshall, and he farmed it, and he also had the entire acreage fenced with cattle fencing, and he bought some young cattle and fed them out out there, and to I don't remember what weight it was, but anyhow, he operated that farm. And he was not afraid to take a chance on various things. And one of the first things that I remember that he and I did, I believe there was an advertisement in the paper from a firm in Mount Vernon, Illinois. I know it was Mount Vernon, whereby these people had household gas cooking ranges for sale, and they had them available. That was one of the items that was not available in the appliance stores at that time, because the production due to the war picture had just not got geared up to that. So they were hard to get. And the normal household kitchen was equipped with a coal or wood range, most of them were, and a lot of them had a water capacity, a reservoir on the side of them, and that was your hot water. That you could use for various purposes, or the lady of the house did. So my father contacted these people, and they had multiple number of kitchen ranges available now, and not only that, but LP gas was just coming into being used more so at about that time. Up until then, about the only way you could get LP gas, or the only way it was available for consumption for use, was in 20-pound cylinders. And what households that were available to that they did have a gasoline or an LP cooking range, they would get their supply from 20-pound cylinders, and which was usually mounted on the side of the house, and it had an automatic device on it whereby when one tank went dry, it would switch over to the other tank and show a signal on it. So there were merchants in the area that supplied these cylinders. One of the biggest companies that was in the business doing that was, I guess it was Phillips Petroleum, because it was called fill gas. And needless to say, compared to the old coal-fired range or a kerosene, there was some kerosene stoves available during World War II, and then some of them was available for the market after that World War II during that time. But they were not 100% satisfactory, because you had to light the burner and let it generate before it got hot for you, and they just were not. The LP gas range was a big improvement. So this firm, my dad also had a single axle truck with a large bed on it that he had acquired, I don't know, a few years before that, and he went to Mount Vernon, Illinois, and brought back a whole truckload of these ranges. Well, needless to say, they got the attention of a lot of households in this community, and I got the job of installing them. And which we had 100-pound cylinders, 100 pounds of gas, and they were tall. A tank that didn't set on concrete blocks or support the side of the house, and the regulator was mounted. I don't know whether it was mounted on the house, but anyhow, the regulator would cut the pressure down on the gas, and it was piped into the range with copper tubing, and we sold those, and there was a period of time there that I would install two of them a day. It was about a day's work. One in the forenoon and one in the afternoon, and I made an awful lot of ladies in the household very, very happy. If I remember properly, those Rangers sold for not over $200, including the installation. If I remember right, it seemed like it. Some of them might have been as low as prices $150 or in that price range, but they were a tremendous asset, an improvement over the old wooden stove or the kerosene. Also, this same company had a program whereby if you would put in a large propane tank, they would sell you all the equipment for refilling bottles, whether it's 20-pound or the 100-pound. And so my father bought one of these and had it installed on the edge of his one field up here north of town, right along Route 1. And we built a small concrete building there, concrete floored building, and put it in just a regular scales like they were used in feed stores, and a pump, and they were these people that he was connected with was some of the instigators of getting liquid LP gas available in the community, and there were very few LP gas tanks out through the country that time, but that was the beginning of the LP industry for consumer use. Mm-hmm. So I worked at that for a while, and then I guess it was it was in 1948 that of course, Belsco was the leading employer here in town, and I put in my application, and I got hired up at Belsco. So then that was I didn't really particularly like the odor or the material out there, but it was very good. It was good employment. These events, these things that happened in my life during that time was very interesting, as I recall them. Ann and I had dated during our high school years, and of course I was very lonesome when I was sent to after basic training. I was sent to Georgia down there by myself, and we corresponded by letters, and not telephones was expensive in those days, long distance. But anyhow, when I came back in early '48, we resumed our association, and we ended up getting married in August of 1947. Yes, I shouldn't forget. I should have that right on my tongue. But anyhow, then I got this. In fact, a fellow by the name of Bill Camp lived down here on South 11th Street, in a few acres there. He was the plant manager, and I got acquainted with him during my high school years, because my dad found an old 1928 Roadster convertible at the junkyard in West Union that he bought for me. We paid $25 for it, but the darn thing didn't have any tires on it. And that was during World War II, and tires were like gold. You didn't get them real easy because they were rationed. Mm-hmm. So I started looking around, and for some reason I found an old car sitting in Mr. Camp's barnyard down there, and it was almost exactly like the one we'd found in the junkyard West Union, and except that it had tires on it. So we contacted Bill. He was a very jovial man, and he said, "Well, sure, it's not doing any good. I'm not even driving it." He had a son that was a few years younger than I, but I don't think he had a driver's license at that time. His first name was Don, and he and I became good friends. After that, also, Mr. Camp and I, Bill Camp and I, became very good friends. So I bought those tires and put the two pieces of junk together, and I had a summertime automobile. And in the years, my years of, I guess after I got my driver's license, the it was a convertible, but it was there was no top to it, so we just drove it in fair weather. But by getting acquainted with Bill Camp, he was a manager, and I went out. I heard that there was possibility they were hiring people, and I went out, and the secretary took me into Bill's office, and we had a few words concerning the old automobile, and then I told him that I was looking for a job, and he said, "Well, we are looking for some people, and I don't know exactly just how soon that we might be able to use you, but I'll certainly keep you in mind." Would you believe that the very next day, somebody from Vesco called and wanted me to go take a physical, and for my employment, and that's I didn't pull any punches. I didn't pay any money under the rug, but my acquaintance with Bill Camp certainly had a lot to do with my being employed. I'm sure of that. So I believe it was in later in, I know it was in 48 when I went to work out there. I think probably in April of 1948, and there was a north end and the south end. They called it that plant. The north end produced everything they produced was a lightweight product. They took what the Vesco actually did. They took natural gas and broke it down to and actually got their heavy product they produced in the south end was a product that made paint, an ingredient that made paint out of. And so I got assigned to the south end of Vesco, and they had boilers, big boilers down there, and they heated this product, and then they got that resin. It was a resin they called it, and it was in liquid form when it was hot, very hot. Something seeming like it was 12 to 1500 degrees. But then they were shut down the fire, and they drove that resin off in about 55-gallon drums, metal drums, and then it would sit there and cool and become a solid product. And that was where I worked. There was 5 of us worked. There was the two top stillmen, and I was the bottom man. But then I was my title was a gauger. We drew off a product in about if I remember right, maybe like 15 different tanks, and they of course they kept very good control over their inventory, and when you're on midnights, one of your jobs was to gauge all of these tanks about 6 o'clock in the morning, bring a written record of what the level was on these tanks. But anyhow, my employment with the Vesco was at that time was very enjoyable, and it was profitable because the Vesco paid good money. I was raised and my parents installed in me a value of $1, and my wife and I lived in a furnished apartment upstairs in what was the old Black Hotel down here, just east of the Route 1 and Route 1 and 40. Of course, all the traffic east and west went through town at that time. But we had an upstairs apartment down there in what was the the innkeepers, the people that operated the motel, they lived downstairs, and there was two apartments upstairs, and it was very comfortable, except that it had no air conditioning. I remember very distinctly when I worked the night shift, and I get off at 7 o'clock, and come home and eat bite and go to bed, and particularly in the summertime, I wake up about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and the bed and I both are wringing wet from sweat. I remember that, one of the things I remember very, very clearly. But the thing that my wife and I did in that period of time is that we saved some money. We saved our money, and because we wanted to get us a different apartment, so we started looking around, and the same building complex, there was a three-room building, three-room house, in fact, that was on South 8th Street, just a half a block off of the intersection. So 8th Street was open clear up to that intersection that time, and Dr. Frank Elias used this little three-room house as his office. And he desired the better quarters, I guess, or needed larger quarters. So he built the office building. He built him an office building just over here on Plum Street, and that little three-room house became empty. So I asked Mr. Blundell talked to Mr. Blundell and about renting that. He said, certainly. You can have that. You've been a tenant here in our upstairs apartment, and you can have first chance of that. So that was we had saved our money, and this was our first residence, and I had our first residence where we had our own furniture, and we was pretty proud of that. It had part of the heat was even furnished from the hotel's heating system, and we had a little stove of some type, I forget what it was, in there that did furnish the rest of it. But we soon, after moving in there, we soon found out that Ann did that she had to keep the front door locked, because she went in there at the front door a few times. There were people sitting in there, and she asked him, who are you? You looking for my husband? They said, no, we're waiting to see the doctor. Oh. that was kind of comical at that time, but we wasn't real sure who all we were going to draw as customers for the doctor, and the doctor wasn't there anymore, so we started locking the front door. I guess Allison, I'm about to leave out one of the most important things that happened in that period of time in our life. Is a simple fact that I was employed at Valsico, and we were saving some money, and we were very happy, and so we thought maybe it was time that we should start our family, and so in 1948, Anne became pregnant, and we got our let's see, we got our first daughter of course, we didn't find out until she was born that she was going to be our daughter, and that was when our Rebecca was born, and she was born on February the 3rd, 1949, and she's going to have a birthday coming up very shortly. This being the last of December or January. So we were very happy. We got, in fact, to get this 3-room apartment because we were more, and I think the other party that we shared the upstairs, the 2 apartments with, were glad that we moved out with a young baby, because they were not happy all the time. They let you know about it with their voices. Okay, the thing that also happened along about that time, we moved into this 3-room house, got our first child, we had been using my father's Plymouth 4-door Plymouth automobile as our private automobile, because he was working for the state of Illinois as a maintenance supervisor, and they furnished him a car. But nationally, there was long lists. New cars were hard to get. There was every dealer had a long list of people wanting a new car. I had put my name in down at the Chevrolet dealership that was operated by Ralph Geckler at that time, and had no idea exactly where my name was because on the list, because it really was immaterial. Because even the dealer didn't know how many cars he was going to get. About that same time, in the first part, the first when 1949 automobiles, when the first ones came out, which would have been in the fall of 1948, Mr. Gecker called me and told me that he had an automobile for me, and I think, and it was a 2-door deluxe, 6-cylinder, red in color, sloping back, and we took delivery of that just before Becky was born. And listen, we got a lot of attention by just going down the road. In fact, I remember very distinctly when I was driving back through West Terre Haute on the grade over there. They were to the hospital, and Becky and Ann were still in the hospital. There was a fellow that looked legitimate. He flagged me down, and I asked him what can I do for you. He said, "I want to buy that automobile," which wasn't. And then that happened to me 2 or 3 times with that car. But anyhow, we got a new daughter. We had new furniture, and had just bought an automobile. What do you think happened? I got laid off the Busico. Mm-hmm. There was a big layoff, and that was not a very we was not really happy at that time, because we didn't know exactly how we was going to pay the bills. But we managed to pay the bills at that time, because that's when I worked for the Marshall Co-op, hauling corn and so on. That I've told you people about on my prior recordings, but then one of the things here's the one thing that happened in my life about that time, as a fact that I had my sister-in-law, my wife and her sister are very close we were very good friends, and so my brother-in-law was Ted Treves, and he was born in the Clarksville community, from a very good family out there. And he was a sales rep for Warren Feed Company. They were headquartered out of Quincy, Illinois. Mormon Feeds was a supplement that the farmer added to his own grain, and for life, particularly for hog feed and the cattle feed both, and it was a very good product. It did the job. But it was the concentrate that Mormon Feed Company put out was considerably more expensive per 100 pounds than you could buy from the local feed store, but it went a lot farther. You mixed it with your own grain. So my brother-in-law was very successful in selling this product in his territory to his customers up in Edgar County, and so I kept bugging him about that time to see if he couldn't get me a job with Morton Feed Company, or if there was anything available. And he said, well, my boss is out of Newton, Illinois, and I'll have a talk with him. And I had seen this man various times before when he might be at Ted and Dorothy's house. And I was there. So in the spring of 1950, Dwight Cooley offered me a position in western Clark County and south down through Crawford County, down towards from Casey clear down to Will Hill area. And it was an area probably about 20 miles south and north and south, maybe about 8 or 10 miles wide. And they had some established customers in that area. But he said that I would have to move. We would have to move to Casey to live over there to work that area properly. And so wife and I found. I don't know, just remember exactly how we went on it, but we found a small cottage type house in Casey, and it was owned by a man in Crawford County. I never seen the man, but I called him on the telephone, and I gave him some. I don't exactly remember, but apparently I don't know there. He checked me out, but. I liked he sounded very reliable, and I guess maybe I convinced him that I might have been partway reliable. But anyhow, he rented that little house, and we told him that we would be moving in it probably within the next week or so. No sooner did I rent that house in Casey and get ready to move over there. The Velsigo was going again, and they had a hiring. Was in the process of hiring some more people, and they contacted me and said that I could come back to work for them. And what a decision this left. So I called Mr. Cooley and told him that what I need to talk to him about. He said, well, before you make your mind up exactly that you're going to give this sales position up, I want to talk to you, and I'll be in Marshall such and such a time. So he came by. And Dwight Cooley was a man, I say at that time, around 50 years of age. Nice man to talk with, regardless of what, but he knew his business, And one of the things that one of the talents that he had was he was a salesman. Mm-hmm. And he started telling me about what I was giving up by giving up the sales position in KZ, what opportunities was over there, and I probably would never have another chance like that if I went to work at Velsico. He probably would not be very conducive to offer me another chance to sell the Mormon feeds. I never will forget the impression that main man made on me at that time. Just he and I, and what he did, he sold me on the idea I'm not going to work at the Velsico chemical plant, of going ahead and taking that sales position out of Casey, Illinois. But before I even talked to Dwight Cooley, I called this man that owned the house in down in Flat Rock area and told him that I wasn't going to be going over there, and so therefore I didn't want his house. This was about 2 days later, or 1 or 2 days later. I talked to Mr. Dwight Cooley, and I had no way of knowing what was going to happen in my life on down the road at that time. But as it happened, that was a big turning point in my life. Mm-hmm. That was a tremendous thing that happened. That the fact that I took that sales position rather than going back to work at the Velsico. Not that there was a thing wrong with the appointment at Velsico, and a lot of my friends, my age and so on, and I had one particular friend that was laid off the same time I was, and he went back to work, and what it amounted to, as I see it now, he stayed and worked at that plant for the next 20 to 30 plus years. Mm-hmm. And I would probably been right along the side of him. Mm-hmm. And there was nothing wrong with it because it paid good money. But the opportunity and the opportunities particularly that I encountered in my life by not being an Velsico employee are just indescribable. Mm-hmm. They're indescribable. The fact, and actually, what happened. When I decided to take that sales position, that was in the spring, about in April, I think, April of 1950. I called this man back over the phone, and I told him I wanted his house. I'd changed my mind. He said, "Well, I was up there and looked the house over and talked to a few people, but I did not rent it. And if you want a house, well, it's still over there. You can rent it. You can have it." So I told him I wanted the house. I think we paid $35 a month for it, and it was a nice little 2-story house. But I have thought about this situation time and time again. that if I had gone back to work at Velsico, and I would probably stay there the next 20 or 30 years, and it would have made Ann and I a good living. Mm-hmm. No question about that. It's doubtful that I would have worked my way up in Velsico employment in that plant here that I would have become a higher paid employee out there. I might have been, but I just am overwhelmed to think that how this happened at that time, because and Mr. Dwight Cooley when he was a salesman. He went out with me after I ended up going to Casey and taking this position, and he went with me and called on a few customers, and he pointed out all the good factors, all the factors about them using Mormon feeds, and made some good sales for me. But in fact, one of the biggest sale I ever made to an individual customer was he helped me with it. He went with me to a man and his wife on a farm just southeast of Casey, and they were chicken raisers. They had if I remember right, they had a 2-story chicken house when they raised chickens for the fryer market, and they had either got in a shipment or were going to get in a big shipment of young chickens, and they had not bought any feed for them. With his influence and his knowledge of the product, he sold them on them ordering enough feed to feed these chickens out that day. And it was I think it was $600 or $800 worth of feed, which was by far the biggest order that I ever sent in all the time I was working. And of course, when I was working on a commission, and after we left there that day, and I put a pencil to that, and that was going to pay me around $65 commission. I couldn't believe it. Here I was, a rather inexperienced young individual, but I was out beating my head against the competition on the sales, and I had made a sale that was going to pay me $65 for one sale. It was in 1950 it was in 1950, and $65 was a big chunk of money back in those days. Well, it so happened that these people were happy. They went ahead and took the order. There was they didn't need all of it because some of got disease, and some of their young chickens died, but they were still happy. I thought about that situation a number of times also. How I got started in the petroleum business, there again is kind of being in the right place at the right time. Not actually me, but my dad, when he operated this in the late 30s and very early, well, it was late 30s, in the 30s when it was, he owned this big gasoline powered engine that powered this separator for thrashing mostly wheat or oats and so on, and it burned a lot of fuel, and it also burned took quite a bit of motor oil. Well, he used what was DX oil at that time, and he bought it from Howard Harper here in Marshall. Howard was the agent or at that time, and my dad just happened to be in his office ordering some product, I guess, or just discussing something or other, and the area salesman came in with DX Oil Company out of Paris, Illinois. He was an older gentleman, but he'd been on the job quite a while, His name was W. Parker. And he discussed with Howard, the area agent and distributor, or agent, we would call ourselves, at that time, the fact that he was losing his employer, actually his agent at West Union, Illinois, wanted to quit, wanted to give that plant up. And so my father gathered all this information together. Of course, he sat in on it, and he told Mr. Parker that he would like for him to interview me for that work, for that agency. And later on, we met, and Mr. W. Parker recommended to the railroad office that they hire me as agent down there. And that was strictly a commission job where you got paid for what you sold. I bought the truck chassis off of Irene Engel was the lady. She was a lady. She was one of the first women they had allowed to have a sales territory in the whole company, Eastern Division company here around Ventura, Indiana, so on. But and her father was also the agent, had her, but it didn't actually work out to do real well. They wanted somebody to take her place. So and she had just bought a new truck that spring, so I ended up buying the truck chassis from her, and they furnished the tank and the pump and all the equipment she needed to haul product to the country and heating oil to heating oil customers. And the way it ended, of course, and I was new too. I was still inexperienced, so to speak. I would have been, I would have been 23 years old. I was 23 years old, and I looked at my own sons at their age, 23 years old. They were inexperienced in business, and I was probably just even worse. But I was what I did. I did like all my life. I loved trucks. Loved trucks, and that part of it was a plus for me. And if Dwight Cooley had not talked me into going ahead with that sales job with Mormon Feeds, I know that I would never have gotten involved in the gasoline industry. And then I ended up spending 57 years and at that, and by working, made a lot of money by working hard at it, and who knows, I might have got into something else, but that's just more or less the story of my life, and it's very refreshing to think about how that happened. I mean, I get a lot of pleasure, I guess you'd say, of what all that my life's work done for my wife and I and my family. And how we could have very easily gone the other way. Or now, I don't mean that Vasco employment didn't give you enough money to raise a family and put them through school and so forth. But anyhow, I didn't go that direction, mainly to the efforts of Dwight Cooley. Now, when I gave that sales position up and I moved back to Marshall, and that was that same year in 1950. I started November 1st of 1950 at West Union. Dwight Cooley did not really give me any bad words or whatsoever. He might have knew somewhat of what I was having. I had a chance to get into. I was operating my own business, and as I recall, he was a gentleman, 100% gentleman about that. Now, I thoroughly enjoyed. I had this new car that I'd bought in '49, and I enjoyed the sales area with Warren Feeds Company. Warren Feeds, and they were out of Quincy. They had a warehouse in this part of the state someplace, but and they delivered with their own truck, and I think they're still in business. I'm not real sure at all. One of the things that I will never forget, I would call, well, let me back up just a little bit. I was just young, and Dwight Cooley wanted me to look a little bit more experienced, and he said, Warren, he said, one of the things you need to do to look a little more experienced, a little more mature, is you need to wear a hat. You need to get you a regular man's hat and wear that when you call on people, because that'll make you look older and possibly help you and make your presentation. And I said, so I tried that, and I don't know whether it worked or not, but the Warren Feed Company had several customers over there in that area. And they continued to buy the product. I never will forget, I didn't make anything big money. It wasn't big money at all today's world. But I at the end of that year, my term, my period of time when I sold Warren Feed, I made average $50 a week. Mm-hmm. In 1950, but I had to furnish the gas for my car. Mm-hmm. But it wasn't too much less than I would have been making at the Vesco, if I recall. I think maybe when I worked at Vesco on that first period of time. I don't really know, but what my pay scale was. That's one thing that I do not recall. But I was kind of, at that time, I was kind of proud of what I was able to do. Mm-hmm. That summer of 1950, and I've given you people some of my recollections. In my own words, some of my stuttering words, but that's just me, and I'm happy that the way life happened, the sequence of events that happened in my life back at that time. I have no regrets, and when I actually, one more thing that happened along about that time, about 3 or 4 years after I had applied for my permission to enter for in school, Holman, Rose Institute of Technology, that's what they called it. They contacted me and said my name came up. They would if I would come over. Or I could fill out an application for enrollment. And I was married, we had 2 daughters at that time, and I was in the gasoline business, and I I was very happy with what I was doing, and I said, well, I'm not interested this time. Mm-hmm. Life has dealt me something that I think that I dearly love, and I believe there's a lot of opportunity, and I'm at this time I'm not going to come to your school, and so I didn't. I along with my application, I sent them $25, and that was in 1947. I sent them $25, and $25 was a lot of money in 1947. Mm-hmm. And so what one of my jokes with my grandson, who did enter and graduate in Roselle about 20. No, it's not that long. About 15 years ago, and it has been 1,000 transmission as an engineer ever since. I told him, I said, they could offer you a lower tuition when you enrolled about 20 some years after I put in my application, because I sent them $25 and they invested that very profitably. They invested my $25 and made it whereby you could go to school for a little less money. Mm-hmm. And I don't know whether he agreed with me or not, but anyhow, that's another segment of life that I'm very proud of, is what he has done for himself. And I possibly could have taken that same route if I had been able to get in that school at that time. That's pretty well all I've got, all the rambling I've got today, Allison. No, I haven't. I have not been boring in my conversation with you, or anybody else who might read or might go through my memoirs. I've tried to make it interesting. It's been my life work. My life work has been very interesting. We've had a few problems. I've had my share of physical problems, but this is January what is 30th. It? Down the 30th, and January's pretty over. I got a birthday coming up in about 6 weeks, the 4th of March. And I will have racked up 90 years.
That's great.
And I can't hardly believe it, but the good Lord has been made good to me, and has allowed me to serve my mankind for this period of time, with the exception the last few years, of course, when I've retired. But I've still kept an interest in what was going on, and so. That's about all I got to tell you today, and I'll think of something else. We'll do this again soon.
Okay. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you, Allison, very much. Bye now.